Our October 14, 2025 Governing Board meeting of Maple Broadband. Welcome. Lots of positive things happening and still kind of hanging our fingernails on other matters, but lots to keep you updated on what we're up to. I will, to get us going here, entertain a motion to approve the agenda. There's a motion from Paul.
Second.
Thanks, Ross. All in favor of approving the agenda, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
And any disapprovals? Any abstentions? We are set on the minutes.
Well, I guess I should abstain. This is Leslie because I was not at the last meeting. So technically, I should abstain. Okay.
We'll mark it that way, Leslie. Thank you for your candor. Next, looking for a motion to approve the September 9 minutes. Thanks, Paul. We have a motion. A second from someone. We have Courage, Zapata. We have a second. That person over there on the right side of my screen. All in favor of approving the minutes, raise your hand or say aye. Any disapprovals or abstentions?
I mean, I guess technically I wasn't at the last one either, so I should abstain. So
okay, that's great. It's still carried, so we're good. Thank you. Oh, okay. Well, before we really get started, let's open the floor to anyone that's on the call to offer comments, public comments. Anyone like to offer any public comments at this early stage of the meeting?
Party going on somewhere?
There used to be a way to mute all, Ellie, but I don't know how to do it.
It's probably us.
Oh. Well,
Yeah, stop that partying.
Try to get your people under control, would you, Adam? Okay, no public comments, it appears. Chair report. There's a lot to talk about. I'm probably going to step on Ellie's toes on a couple of these items, as I usually do, but I'll give you kind of a high-level view on a couple of things that have been going on and how we see our futures at this point. As was reported to you, prospects are looking good for approval of our BEAD application. There's some intervening steps on that, and we do not know for sure if it's a done deal. I think we are certainly planning as if we are going to achieve approval of that. That grant, if and when it is approved, will yield $9,269,000 towards construction. So that's would really make a huge difference in our efforts and work towards our goal of being able to build our entire network without having to borrow any money. Also, fairly recently, as a matter of fact, yesterday at the Vermont Community Broadband Board, Maple Broadband was approved a sum of $1,122,000 towards the Affordable Long Drop program. And not to steal all of Ellie's thunder, but the objective here is that when we first built our network, there were lots of subscribers who wanted to connect to us. Not a lot. There was a significant share of subscribers who wanted to subscribe to us, but they learned that if they wanted their service to be delivered underground, it was going to be prohibitively expensive. So they kind of got put in a queue for an opportunity such as now, where we will be able to help offset construction costs associated with these especially expensive underground deployments. So that one's not on a contingency. It's definitely going to happen. On that one, the devil is in the details. There's a lot of process questions that need to be answered. Ellie's, our executive director's suggestion to the executive committee, which we agreed to, was We don't, this is not a wide open process. It does have to be completed by about this time next year. But Ellie's suggestion, which we agreed to, was that we're going to spend our next few months getting really clear on what we need to do and how we need to do it, iron out any potential kinks in the process, and then hit the ground running in the spring. So that's our current plan on that. I'm sure we'll be telling you more about that, but it certainly is, there may be an opportunity for us to get kind of what I would call a windfall of additional subscribers if we can help fund the delivery of service to homes and locations that are exceedingly far from our nearest utility pole. That is all I have for my chair report for now. Any questions? Okay. Let's move on. Ellie, do you want to take this over, bead and long drop?
Sure. Well, I'm not actually sure what I can add to what you just said, Steve. I think you've actually stolen all of my thunder. I guess maybe the only one additional thing is on the long drop. I do have some homework to be mapping out the high level process bits and then the customer journey, as we call it, for people to be able to express interest, both the ones currently in the queue and then people who have yet to sign up. So that's something that I'm busy working on right now, and we'll be running past the executive committee with a plan to launch that early next month to the public.
You know, something else that we probably should talk about briefly, Ellie, and it's not on the agenda, but maybe we can cover it under this item 6, is actually, why don't we move it to 9? Let's talk about, Ellie, if you're agreeable, under item 9 on the agenda, to talk briefly about next steps regarding getting a network design developed. I think it's something that the governing board should probably hear a little bit about. Okay. Network design, one moment. Okay. Annual report. One thing that caught my eye when I looked at that first draft was that magic number of, I think, $10+ million worth of funds that will be working towards our goals. And I don't know, Ellie, you want to walk us through that, please?
Sure thing. Well, so I distributed the draft annual report out to everyone, so you should all have it. And what I wrote in the in the mail, I haven't gotten an updated copy from Middleburg. I rewrote the copy on pages 2 and 6, talking about 2 is really talking about what we've achieved this year. 6 is talking about what we're looking at going forward. And a couple of other notes is you may notice the map on there looks a little bit funky. So there's some changes to the map to basically put all of the routes in a single color, get the updates from WCVT from this year, and then put a differentiated background between our service territory and their service territory. So that needs to happen still. And then the final thing is, Steve mentioned earlier the amount of the BEAD grant, and just to remind everyone, there was a matching grant from the state of Vermont. So the legislature appropriated $30 million for CUDs to enable us to have the statutorily required match money for the BEAD grant. So there's another $3.7 million of grant money that comes along with that. And so one of the changes was we'd actually, my understanding was that was capped at a little bit under 3.5 million because of the board resolution. And then working with staff in the last couple of weeks, they have granted us the entirety of the 3.7 that was allocated. So the draft annual report you see is just shy of 14 million. I think it says 13.89, and the actual number is just on the side of a million. So the highlight is going to be $14 million in grant funding raised this year. As Steve said, we have gotten the thumbs up on the long drop amounts, and we just need to have BEAD signed, sealed, and delivered. But I think in terms of the draft reports to distribute to our member towns this month, I think that's accurate. We are projecting at this point in time that we will, in fact, receive the BEAD funding.
Ellie,
I can share my screen and walk you guys through it, but you've also... Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, your connection's not that great. You're freezing alternately once in a while and breaking up a little bit. So I think maybe, yeah, you might be best to go audio and sharing screens. Maybe not. I can do a screen share if need be, if people are interested. Questions for
Okay,
Ellie?
that works for me.
Thank you. Anything else for Ellie on this topic? The annual report. And again, I think that.
Will we be seeing a final copy of the annual report before it's distributed to the member towns?
It needs to go out to the member towns by the end of this month. I think that for procedural purposes, it would be good to have the vote on both this and then the budget and the pro forma, subject to whatever, my discretion or the final approval of the exec, but an updated annual report to the governing board before it goes out.
Okay, and my second question is, how is it distributed? Is it sent to like town clerks? Is it posted on Front Porch Forum? Like, what's the method of distribution?
So that's a great question. So we do. So I email that per town clerks and a couple of others, and then CC to the delegates and the alternates. And then we also put it up on our website, and we are also going to be talking about a newsletter and putting a link to the items there and telling people that, because the purpose of this is to distribute. Of November, we need to have a public hearing to review these documents, and we typically haven't had that many members of the public participate. So I thought this year we'd put it in the newsletter and see if we get someone that shows up. But if anyone has any other suggestions on where to distribute, I'm open. Paul's got his hand up.
Yeah, thanks. You may have already mentioned it and I probably missed it, but we're supposed to keep this confidential for now, right? Until we approve it.
I don't really have an opinion on that. I mean, it's a draft of a public document. I don't think it's terribly confidential. We just probably don't want things being circulated out there that aren't really final. So that's sort of a non-answer answer.
Yeah, I would agree with Ellie's assertion that this is, we're trying to be working in the open as much to the degree that we can. Adam's put his hand up and he may be able to help us with this.
No, it wasn't me helping you with this. I do think it's your annual report. It's a public document. I think getting it out to a lot of people is great. But Ross had a question, and that's why I put my hand up.
Oh, Ross.
It was more of a observation, kind of a comment. In page 2, and the second to last paragraph, it talks about that we build infrastructure thoughtfully. We've worked to ensure the region has connectivity, and that's fine. But it seems to me it might be stronger if we say we build infrastructure and we work, and I put it more in the present tense. It just a thought. It's not like it's wrong or anything. It's just an observation.
Yeah, no, that's I agree with you, Ross. I actually wasn't very happy with the draft copy on pages 2 and 6, so I rewrote it entirely. But the London Middlebury hasn't yet incorporated that. So the next version you see will have those pages look somewhat different.
What else do we have? Any other questions? So, so Ellie, you're soliciting approval for preliminary approval for the draft with an understanding that there's going to be revisions coming and they'll be subject to subsequent approval. Is that your thinking?
Well, I'm not sure if you want to have the governing board do an email vote on the final version. This is a draft. I think that I would like to have a vote that authorizes me to distribute a draft version by the end of the month, and with the understanding that I'll circulate an update. And if anyone has any major objections to it, then throw up the flag. But then we have the public hearing next month, and the final version is in December. So I think, again, just everyone's expectation, and when we're communicating this to the member towns and to the public, is that this is a draft. And especially the bead part, we don't know that for certain right now. So we have to make sure that that's also clear in our public commentary about it.
Yeah, it's a good point, and I thought maybe your introduction when you sent out these documents to everyone, I thought it was in there, but I don't see it in there. And to me, basically, the key message here is that there's there's a number of intervening steps between now and having a final document,
Yep.
both in terms of the pro forma as well as the annual report. And part of what we're doing in the next 2 months is refining the document, making changes that we received from our governing board, and things like that. So it is by no means a final, and so, but we also want to promote, and from my perspective, continue to move the document forward until it achieves its end state. So to that end, I guess I would tender a motion to approve issue of the current draft of the document with an understanding that it's going to be subject to further revisions in coming weeks. Is there a second? It's a second from Zapata. Discussions.
Yes, Steve, this is Paul.
Go.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure
Sorry.
you could hear me. Yeah, my bad. I think it may be a good idea, an editorial suggestion is to put in the footer that this is a draft. So label it as a draft annual report. So just in case, this version gets out and it's not consistent with the final report, it's clear that this is a draft. And further along those lines, if we could give it a revision number in the footer, if that's not too complicated, I think that might be helpful just to make sure that people know if the document that they have in their hand is a particular version.
Those are both good suggestions. The current one it's actually a good point. I was just looking at it. It has draft and watermark on some of the pages, but not all of them. And adding it to the footer certainly wouldn't hurt. And I love the idea of a revision number. So I'll pass all of that along to London Middlebury. Thank you, Paul.
Okay, thanks.
Any other discussion before we move to a vote? Okay, let's move to a vote. All in favor of approving issue of the current draft of the documents, please raise your hand or say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, Ellie, we got to go. I think you're.
Great.
I think you're speaking, Ellie, and you're still cutting in and out. I guess we'll just have to kind of work our way through
That's the first one.
it. Justin, you had your hand up.
Yeah, just real quick. I didn't notice anywhere in the annual report where if there's any talk on the community engagement that Ellie and y'all did. And I was wondering if you wanted to add, I know there's some language about it, but like the specific things like the Virgins kind of day and whatnot, if you wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, I can pass that along to London Middlebury. Different sponsorships.
Ellie, there was one item that Zapata had raised that I was going to send you an email on, but I guess I'll float it now. The notion of a calendar of events that Maple Broadband will be attending. And it seems to, in order to acknowledge what I think Zapata had in mind, it would be, for example, a 2026 calendar, and it would show which events are being held in which month. They may not be real precise as far as what days and things like that, but what appeals to me about that is that as much as we're very interested in getting our governing board to help support the work that we're doing, I think it might be a far better incentive if they could look at a calendar and see that, well, I really can't do it this fall, but I think this summer I might be able to help, and then they could kind of reach out to you and schedule it. That might be a good kind of a pre-publicity solution that might be very helpful. I wouldn't be looking to you for a commitment on that, but I think I would want to underscore Zapata's suggestion from the last executive committee meeting is a good way to kind of spread the news about what we're doing and when we're going to do things.
I agree with that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's move on to financial. Yeah, how do you want to do this? I think you should share the screen if you want. I don't know even if Lynn is on the call, so how do we want to do this? Suggestions? Oh, Lynn's there.
Yeah, Lynn's there. I think my bandwidth is bad.
Yeah.
Share and I can talk to it.
Okay. So Lynn, when you get a chance, you are muted right now.
Steve, can you bring
I'm
the
gonna try switching
document
to
up?
my cell phone. So
Yeah. 1 moment. Board packet. Give me a minute. I gotta figure out what we have here. That's the annual report. We're not doing that. All right. So this is the dashboard we're looking at. Is that correct? Okay. So far, so good. I've got the dashboard up. 1 moment. The process. It's all a process. Let's see here. There we go. So, which tab do we want to look at first, Lynn?
Oh wow. Is it any way you can make it bigger? Because
Can
it's
do.
tiny. I would say let's start. I guess let me just ask, because the other thing that Ellie will talk about is the projected actuals in the 2026 budget. Anybody have any questions about the budget to actual? And this is through the third quarter, which is September.
I have a question, I guess.
Okay.
Just from when I look at this, it suggests to me that we're not perhaps doing as good a job as we could be on promoting the low income installation and subscription opportunities.
Mm-hmm. And there is a reason for that. Ellie, I hope you can chime in here. Isn't it about a program that no longer exists?
yeah, so we passed this budget last year with the understanding that at some point this year we want to have money in the budget to be able to launch a subsidy program to replace the Affordable Connectivity Program, which ended last year, earlier this year. I don't know. It ended. Anyway, so what we're showing there is there's 2 customers that are continuing to receive that benefit. And I think it was just the last executive committee meeting, they approved, because part of what we're planning to launch along with the long drop application program is a continuation of the ACP for new eligible households. But we didn't until now have a methodology to be able to do income verifications of households that would like that benefit. So CVOEO has agreed to do those verifications, and we need to make sure that we, again, design the process and get the paperwork in place and get the legal agreement in place. But that's part of what we plan to launch along with the long drop program. And so obviously when we have it in place and we can get new households signed up, there's absolutely going to be a marketing and awareness aspect of that. Is this audio better, by the way? I switched to the cell network.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
Much.
good.
Thank you.
Great. Wonderful.
Okay.
So yeah, so when you see next year's budget, it's basically the same numbers, but I'm hoping, well, actually it's the same number for the subsidies, and then the installation is going to 0 because we have the long drop program. So we're not paying for that out of our own pockets, if you will. We're paying for that out of grants.
Any other questions about the budget to actual?
Let's move to it. If someone would tell me where we want to go with which tab we should look at, I can certainly do that.
Should we, Ellie, go to the first tab?
Yep, that's where we usually start, is the active grants tab.
Okay. And, okay, there you go. Okay, so usually, what we're looking at here is the bottom line, total cash and grant balances available. So pre-construction, there's still over $1 million, and there's more flexibility about how pre-construction is spent. Ellie, you chime in if I'm getting anything wrong here. And still some money in construction, of course, town ARPA and the ARPA match. And so as of the end of September, it's still $2.5 million in cash and grant balances. And Ellie, maybe it would be helpful for people to understand, because there's work going on right now, what this will look like, this balance, as we go into the last quarter of the year. I mean, it will be reduced.
Yeah, I think it's probably easiest to talk about that when we have the 2025 pro forma put up, because those numbers are actually projected up there. But we have about 10 miles that we're building this year, and we're paying for that. Some of that is coming out of construction, and some of that is coming out from the town ARPA for the routes that were not eligible under our construction grants. And the other thing, just since we're talking about it by way of introduction, is that from a budgetary standpoint, everything on this tab is ARPA funding. The original source of these funds is ARPA, and all of that money needs to be spent by the end of next year. Otherwise, we have to give it back. So obviously, we don't want to be giving it back. And because we don't want to be giving it back, you will see the budget for next year reflecting all of this being spent down. And the reason that we haven't spent more of it this year is that we weren't clear what the status of BEAD was. And if we didn't get BEAD, we'd spend it in a different way than what we're projecting doing now. So obviously there's still work to do in terms of where exactly we're going to spend it, what routes we're going to be spending with each of these different pots of money. But I just thought I'd say that before, as an introduction to the budget discussion we'll have in a few minutes.
Great. Thank you. Any questions? All right. And then operations we look at, right, Ellie?
Yep.
Okay. Ellie, I'm going to let you talk about this.
Yeah, so the big highlight on this one is that we actually added whatever it was, about 5 miles of service. 4.1 miles of service. We had a couple of line extensions that went live in the month of September, which is great. And we have some more that we're hoping to get up by the end of the year. Other than that, we had 20 new installations, and both September and August were about almost approximately double what we'd had previously over the summer. So something seems to be going right in terms of the awareness that we're doing on the marketing side. So that's good. Other than that, I don't really think there's anything here that I want to call out in particular, but I can happily answer any questions anyone has.
So is there any other under financial that we want to talk about? Ellie?
Well, we need to have the 2025 pro forma and 2026 budget discussion, but I think in terms of the dashboard review, we've covered everything.
Okay. Oh, here we go. One moment. That's not it. Stand by, please.
Keep calm and carry on.
Yeah.
So I do have one question. Maybe it's just a matter of nomenclature, but with the new installations and active subscribers, etc., they seem to all be above what the business plan had indicated, with the exception of the passings, where there's, a negative 161 as a variance. So I guess how is a passing defined as opposed to it being considered, say, a new installation or a pending installation?
Okay, so passings are the number of households that the fiber goes by. So if there's a mile and there's 10 houses on the mile, we have 10 passings. And if 2 of them subscribe to service, we have 2 subscribers and a 20% take rate. So that's what the passings are. So the actual definition of what is a passing is it's according to our 2022 construction grant. So basically it's anything with an E911 address. And the reason that the actual passings is lower than the plan is that when I did the plan, I think I last revised it in July, but I was presuming that more make ready would be done before when it is, and that we would therefore have more construction. There have been a couple things that we've been waiting on Green Mountain Power for what seems like forever. But they are moving forward now eventually. And what we're planning to do just for efficiency is to have Syracuse come back next month and do all the remaining work that we had prepared, for which we actually have the permits. So there's some buried work and there's some aerial work. And realistically, it's almost impossible. I do revise the plan at least twice a year. According to our financial policies and procedures, I need to do it twice a year, but it seems like this year I've been revising it almost constantly, and I'm going to be doing it again now to better incorporate the projected customers coming on board as a result of the long drop program. Because right now the model doesn't really account for that sort of exogenous change to the take rate in an area over time. So I'll be putting that in. But basically, the closer to when the plan is published, the actuals look closer to plan, but it's always going to be off because it's really whenever if the plan is done twice a year, it's practically impossible to get it to be 100% actual. But that gives you a sense that and also when I do the business plan, I try to be overly conservative in terms of the number of new customers we pick up, because that then means that the revenues are lower. And if the numbers still work with more pessimistic projections and then we exceed them, that's a good thing. Because, like, you don't want to be unrealistic, but you also don't want it to be overly optimistic. So I think I tend to be overly optimistic in terms of our construction speed. But going into next year, that's something we're going to have to keep a closer eye on because, as I said, we have to spend the money next year.
So let me ask a different way also. Because passings is underneath a metrics, you're utilizing it as a metric in order to forecast or predict or plan on what might become a new installation in the future.
Yep.
Okay. So that's not a benchmark that we're specifically trying to meet, but it is a metric that is integrated into your calculations for how you come up with what we hope or expect to have as far as new installations.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that as we start to move into next year and try and get ourselves ahead of the make ready, then we will be having construction as more of a target for our construction crews. But right now it was kind of a guess based on the miles where we thought we'd have the make ready done at a particular time, but we didn't really, we kind of, as I said earlier, we held up actually pulling the trigger on what we plan to build this year until we had more of a sense of BEAD. So it's, in an ideal world, you have all of your permits ahead of time, and it's really just you have the clear to go as fast as the construction crews can build.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to understand those definitions better.
Yep, and Leslie's got her hand up.
Yeah, I just had a really quick question. I noticed in one of the last slides, there were 95 disconnects and there's a little comment in the field. What are those mostly attributable to? Seems like a high number.
Those are mostly attributed to well, that's 95 all time, but there was, I think, a jump of 14 from the previous month. But those customer disconnects are when customers don't pay after.
Oh, okay.
So WCVT has a process they go through to try and get people to pay. And then eventually, if they don't pay, they disconnect them. And usually most people wind up paying and get reconnected, but some of them don't. And then they're permanent disconnects and they go to collections.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Ellie, I've got the budget up for us to talk about.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so just to orient everyone, and again, you've all had a chance to review this for a couple of days here. So the first column is the 2025 budget that was passed last year. The next column, column C, is where we are currently projecting we're going to close out the year. And obviously, as with the annual reports, when we look at this again in November, it's going to be revised, and when we look at it again in December, it's going to be even further revised. But even still, it's always good to have an estimate at this point in time of what we're going to be seeing on the in terms of end of year actuals. And then the next column over, column E, is the budget for 2026, and then column G is comments or explanatory notes on the budgetary numbers. So it's probably easiest if we go through this just by talking through the projected actuals. Or I guess we can do the projected actuals and the budget kind of side by side. It's just we go down the sheet. So if we start at the top with operational revenue, these are so the subscriber payments received, installation fees received, and those are what you see every month on the dashboard. So those are the actuals that have been billed. No pun intended there. And then the budget is based on the projections coming out of the financial model of how many customers we plan to have. And then I've added in 150 new customers from the long drop program for next year. The dividend revenue line, that's essentially a supplier rebate that we get from NRTC for crowd fiber. And then interest income is the interest that we make on the money in the bank account. And then, as I said earlier, we next year's budget has the full $10,000 of low income subscription subsidies, which I think is about right. So any KCV is seeing about 4% of total subscribers have actually successfully qualified themselves for their copy of the ACP program, which has the same rules as us. So if we use that same 4%, then $10,000 for the year is about on. And then the long drop program is going to be covering the installation subsidies and the buried subsidies. And yeah, so that's it on the operational revenues. Let me just stop there for questions or comments before we move on. Okay, I'm going to move on. So the grants revenue, so starting with pre-construction, we have pulled down the entirety of the pre-construction grant allocation. So we have that, and so obviously we're not projecting any more income from that in 2026. The construction grants, we received about 700,000 a few months ago and are projecting to draw down the balance of the grants next year. Town ARPA contributions, we got $50,000 from Middlebury. There's no more. Oops, you've scrolled down too far. I can't see what I'm talking about now. Thank you. Okay, and then going up, the BEAD match from the legislature. So the way that this is as I mentioned earlier, this is our $3.7 million, which is our pro rata share of the 30 million from the legislature for federal grant match. So according to the terms of that, we could invoice 30% on the provisional award, and then 50% when we actually get a signed BEAD agreement. And then so this assumes that payment happens in the first quarter of 2026, and then the balance would come about a year later. So I'm not projecting that final 20% in either 25 or 26. And then the affordable long drop program, we have yet to see the milestones that come along with that. And so I put the projections for this year and next year. The total there adds up to the 1.12 million that Steve mentioned earlier. But until we get the grant agreement, I'm not 100% sure how much we'll see this year and how much we'll see next year. And BEAD, to be totally honest, is really completely a guess because we had to put something in there, but same story. We don't know when we'll get that grant agreement, and we don't know what the milestones are. And until we know that, I think I've said this the last 2 governing board meetings, both on the income and expense side of BEAD, we have to have some estimates for budgetary purposes right now, but I fully expect that we'll have more information and we'll refine this, and it will be significantly different by the time we finalize our budget in December. Everyone good with that? Okay. So if you'd scroll down, the next section here, this is just a reorganization. We've had these numbers in our budget before of subscriber refunds, bad debts, merchant credit card fees, operator fees as well. So basically what I did is I took all of the fees that are a proportion of the annual recurring revenue and I moved them all into one section together, as opposed to other sorts of things like marketing or like salaries or like insurance or audit fees, where those things cost the same regardless of how much revenue we have. So I just moved those to make it a little bit easier to read, and then you can see their calculations in terms of how they are calculated. The operator fees don't exactly work that way according to our agreements, but that's essentially an easy way to model them. They work out to about that proportion. Any questions on that? Okay, so moving on, so the indirect operating costs, for the most part, what you're seeing here is these are the numbers for next year are based on what we've spent this year to date with updates based on projected inflation and known rate increases and so on and so forth. I think the one thing that we should definitely be talking about is the marketing budget, because I think this is probably the most discretionary part of the entire budget. So that's broken into advertising and promotion and then into marketing. So what's in marketing is essentially your overheads and your brand building. So that's a retainer to London Middlebury, the software licenses that we use, for example, for the marketing software and marketing automation. And I've also put in there, as Stephen Zapata were saying earlier, I've put in for budgetary purposes, having London Middlebury staff some key events just to make sure that we have bodies to do that. And if we get out an events calendar and we're able to get volunteers from the governing board and we train them or from the community, so much the better. But I would rather make sure that we have money in the budget to be attending these events than not have money in the budget and not attend events, because London Middlebury has made it really clear that they think it's really important, but there's only one of me and I can't be in two places at once, and sometimes there's critical operational things that I need to do, and I can't be manning a booth at a farmer's market. And then advertising and promotion. So what goes up here is this is marketing costs that go directly towards customer acquisition. And you'll notice for this year we're significantly under budget, and there's a couple of reasons for that, but basically one of the reasons is that London Middlebury did some we did some testing this year of what sorts of things we thought worked, at kind of just to be able to test the waters and see. And then the intention for next year is to scale up. And there was also some things where we didn't spend as much money, for example, on digital marketing for this year, because we wanted to get the new website up and running, and we wanted to get the new local photography done, and really just make sure that we did the refresh and did the, not quite a rebrand, but we redid the look and feel of our marketing materials and our marketing campaigns before going out and doing a big splash. So basically they have opinions as to what they think works, which is being active in the local community, sponsoring local events, and doing more targeted advertising, and also direct mail, which we haven't really done too much direct mail this year, but we want to be doing more. And they also have in the budget hiring some staff to go doing some door knocking to drum up business. So that's the reason that the budget is even higher for 26 than it was for 25. And this year the plan is actually to spend it. So any comments on marketing before I move on and talk about the other things? I mean, that's really probably, as I said, that's the single biggest discretionary thing. I mean, we have to pay for auditing, we have to pay insurance. The executive committee has approved the increases to my salary, and we know the increases for health insurance costs. But marketing we can certainly talk about. We can make it higher, we can make it lower.
So I have
Love
one
to hear your thoughts.
question, Ellie, as far as the advertising and promotion, in response to the long drop program that is now a green light, and hopefully a finalization of the BEAD award, will that be integrated into a very concentrated marketing or promotional effort?
And actually, that's a good point, because now that I say that, probably our projected actuals for 2025 are going to be higher as a result, which I didn't factor in when I was doing this.
But that is going to be the intent, right? Is now that we've got this long drop program with a green light, that we're going to try and hit the ground running to really push it so that we're ready for the construction season of spring 2026.
100%. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay, great. I think the budget for marketing is probably undervalued here, because it's all about getting the word out and getting the subscribers and getting people into place. So I think this is wonderful.
Anything else for Ellie? Or are we done, Ellie? Are we gone away through this thing? No.
Well, we've done the operating expenses. Now we need to go down to the capital budget side. So I'll just direct your attention to the bottom tabs. So there's actually 3 tabs to the right of the budget. So there's ARPA capital, long drop, and BEAD capital. And then there's a couple of there's also an ARPA drawdown tab, because I wanted to make sure that we were planning to spend all of the money in the different, yeah, there you go, in the different buckets. And so this is where you can see the details, because essentially, just to make my life simpler and your life simpler reviewing this, I didn't want to just have a total capital budget where then when we find out more information on BEAD, the numbers change and you can't separate the peas from the carrots and tell what changed. So that's why everything is split out like that. So the ARPA capital budget shows the planned expenditure by capital category of the remaining ARPA funds. I stuck them all in there, all of the ARPA ones, rather than having one tab for pre-construction versus construction versus town ARPA, but that's what's in there. And then long drop is similar. So there's a lot of capital expenses, and there's also some overheads for program administration and customer coordination. And then finally, the BEAD capital, which is, as I said earlier, this is as much a guess as, or an educated projection as the income side. So that all flows back into the 2026 budget, where these things all add up. So we take, for example, all the sum of materials across all of these 3 tabs goes into the 2026 budget under the materials line, and the same for construction labor, and the same for construction oversight. So, I mean, the big caveat with all of this at this point is we still, especially for BEAD, but even for the remainder of, especially for BEAD and for long drop, everything on there we need to put out to bid under our procurement rules and under uniform guidance. So the actual prices that we pay, they may vary, they may go up or down, there's contingency built in. But again, for budgetary purposes, I think this is directionally correct. The really big caveat is on the BEAD, we just don't know. That one might change a lot when we get the milestones and kind of think about things and understand the permitting process. You know, we already know that the Green Mountain National Forest permit is going to take quite a while, but we don't know what the constraints are on the other parts of the network. So hopefully we're going to try and build as much as we can, as quickly as we can, but until we understand that process better, it's impossible to know for BEAD when we can start spending the money. So that makes it really super hard to have an accurate budget at this point in time. But you guys have heard all this before, it's nothing new.
A couple quick explainers for some of the audience that may not be familiar with the term. Make ready is a term related to the fees that we pay Green Mountain Power, who owns the poles, to make ready for us to install our fiber on those poles. And so part that, it's not a simple process, but ultimately there is once Green Mountain Power knows what we have in mind, they go out and survey the pole and they estimate what it's going to cost them to move things around to make room for us, and those fees are what we pay to accommodate that. The other item that Ellie mentioned that you may not have picked on quickly enough was that she mentioned Syracuse. Syracuse Utilities is the construction firm that we have pretty much exclusively used for all the construction we've done to date. And that was all done through ARPA funding. I think if we could, we'd love to award the BEAD work. If and when that arrives, we'd love to award it to them, because they're professionals, they do a good job. We get good value from them. But as Ellie had said, this is a large expenditure item. We can't just award the work to them. So that's going to go out. That's going to have to go out to bid, and we'll just have to see how that plays out. We're going to have to go with some discretion. We're going to have to award to the low bidder on that. Any other questions of Ellie regarding all of our financial tabs? Zapata.
Yeah, not so much about the financial tabs. Thank you. That was really helpful. But more about when it comes to RFPs and soliciting the estimates of work, et cetera, and then selecting, quote, the lowest bidder. How does a I'm going to say a history of a working relationship factor into the selective process, because quite honestly, I've reviewed RFPs before. I've been in a situation of having to work with the one who won it with the lowest bid and have not been satisfied with the work, et cetera, or they were awarded and then they end up coming in with change orders or et cetera, where it would have been best if we had gone with the second highest or the third highest, or maybe even the fourth highest bidder, and having already had an established working relationship. So I'm just wondering what the oversight is and the selection process looks like.
Yeah, let me give a quick answer to that. I'm sure Ellie would like to expand on it. Our RFPs contain a number of different sections, but near the bottom of the RFP, we also explain what the weighting we apply to each of the key characteristics of the response. And for example, the price is part of it, and the price is usually no more than 50% of the value we apply towards it. And it's also about experience and qualifications and a number of other items that we're carefully select when we prepare the RFP. So I think from my perspective, we do leave enough space for ourselves to do the right thing, to make sure that we're being economical in our expenditures, but we're also making sure that we're not giving away money just because, or reducing expenditures just because it's a low bid or it's not. I think Ellie and I both have had that same kind of experience you have, Zapata. It's all too often the low bidder is not the best solution. So we'll have to wait and see, but we're pretty careful about that, because once we award the construction work, we're kind of married to that contractor for the duration of the project. Short of something really catastrophic, we'd be stuck with them. So we really need to make sure that we're making a decision that we can live with.
And is that something that is voted on by the governing board or by the executive committee, or is that a separate process entirely, maybe through the financial committee, for example?
If it's over $250,000, according to our current policies, the governing board has to approve the procurements. And the Treasury actually just updated their guidelines to bump that to 300,000. So that's something that we can consider revising those. But conceptually, if it's a couple $100,000, it goes to the governing board. I think that's even in the bylaws. But to answer your other part of the question, Zapata, the source of these grant funds is originally federal, so we have to follow the requirements of uniform guidance. And uniform guidance does give broad discretion to the entity that receives the grant funds to make the best purchase, which is not always the lowest price purchase. It explicitly allows taking other factors into consideration to make sure that it's the best combination of price and quality. So we're all fully aligned on this point.
Other questions on this topic? Ellie, is there anything on the financial side of things, or Lynn, is there anything else we missed here, or can we move on?
You guys need to vote to approve distribution of the pro forma, which is the 2025 projection and the 26 budget to our member towns.
I make a motion that we approve issue of the pro forma, subject to future change. Is there a second? There's a second from Paul and Chris. Discussion? Are we ready for a vote? All in favor of forwarding the pro forma and associated documents, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, Ellie, good to go.
I think we just approved the pro forma. We need to do the draft 2026 budget as well.
I move that we approve release of the current draft 2026 budget. Is there a second?
Second.
We got a second from Ross. All in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you, everyone.
Yep. Thank
Onward.
you, everyone. So I will get these out later this month, along with the draft annual report. So as I said earlier, I plan to distribute the revised version of that to the governing board as an FYI. Give you guys a couple days to look at it and see if anyone has any violent disagreements or issues with it, and then we have plenty of time before the end of the month.
And
Thank you all.
Ellie, we have a hearing in November, do we not?
That's correct. So the first half hour of our governing board meeting is a public hearing specifically to review these documents. So, which in the past couple of years, it's basically just been us, but we will be putting it out in the newsletter and social media as well, and telling our member towns we'd love to see them and other people, and maybe we'll get public participation.
Great, thank you.
And so that meeting is on a normally scheduled meeting, and the meeting is not extended in any length of time. It incorporates the public portion of it fully.
In the past,
Yes, the first half hour is the public hearing, and then the typical agenda is the next hour. Sorry, Steve,
Okay.
I spoke over you.
Yeah, so Zapata, yeah, that when Ellie distributes the agenda, you'll see it. You'll see that basically it's a single agenda, and the top of the agenda is the hearing. And typically, what we've done is, when I say we, it's probably pretty much Ellie, is kind of walk through the documents to expand on any questions and describe at a high level what the documents are, and entertain any questions and entertain any changes that are suggested by the audience. And the audience is not exclusively the governing board. It's any member of Maple Broadband's towns, any attendee who wants to comment and criticize, make changes. That's the opportunity to express themselves. So it's, but historically, it's been a pretty fast half hour, and there haven't been a lot of questions. There haven't been any major changes. And then we've just, adjourned our hearing and moved on to commence the monthly governing board meeting.
Question, one comment?
Yes.
It strikes me that this would be a great opportunity for engagement with our subscribers, pointing out that, their town is helping to run this, and that they have a chance for input and help to differentiate ourselves from the other broadband providers out there. That this is something that's unique to us, and that could be perhaps highlighted.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I'm planning to make sure that it's in the newsletter. If you're suggesting that we maybe do an email to our subscribers as well, that's something we could talk to WCVT about. It could be done. I think my question would be if we want to do it now or if we want to do it at the end of the year with the final.
Yeah,
Might make more sense.
definitely, yeah. I think the final, not the draft. That's true.
Okay. Well, let me speak to London Middlebury and WCVT and take that up. I think it's a solid suggestion, but one or more of them may have some thoughts about that. So let me take that up and then report back.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everyone. It's been a very, very productive and important part of today's meeting. So glad we got those sorted out. What I had suggested that Ellie agreed to was under item 9, other updates in business, is just to kind of give you a quick summary of what we're kind of doing in the background as we prepare for what happens next year and the following years. I think one important item is that, as Ellie kind of briefly mentioned, the work that we have to do in the Green Mountain National Forest is part of the work of building out Ripton. Involves a permitting process that's not typical for the rest of our district. It has to be overseen by the National Forest Service. There's lots of steps. It doesn't necessarily get approved on the fly. There are specific windows during which the application process is reviewed and approved or rejected. And so what I'm assuming, and it's kind of really subject to how all these things flow, is that assuming we get BEAD money, as expected sometime in the next couple months, that we get approval on that, and then assuming that the NEPA permitting, the environmental permitting that's needed for the balance of our construction territory minus Ripton, once that gets finalized, and we still don't have detail on that process, so we're currently waiting for clarification on exactly what's going to be involved in the scope of that. But regardless, that has to be finalized, and we really can't even spend, even though we might understand that we've been approved, we've been awarded the BEAD funds, we can't spend that money yet until the permitting is done. And so as a result, any work that we do between now and when that approval happens, we have to use other sources of funds to do the work that we need to do. And we are eager to issue a design for our Middlebury and Ripton serving areas. So there's that's the last two towns we have yet to serve as part of our mandate. And so the way I envision it, and again, it's kind of lots of potential contingencies, but I think the way I see it is that all steps go as we expect they will. We will build out our Middlebury serving area in 2026, and because of the absorbing nature of the permitting that we have to do in the Green Mountain National Forest, we're probably not going to get that done in 2026. So I'm looking at this as a kind of two-phase process. We'll, in an ideal world, we'll phase one will be building out the entirety of our Middlebury serving area, and then by the time 2027 comes around, I'm hoping we'll have completed all the permitting we need to with the National Forest Service and NEPA, and we'll be able to do the necessary construction plan in Ripton. So two-step process, all again depends on a whole bunch of contingencies that we currently have no control over, but that's kind of the way I envision it. That's the message I'm currently sending to anybody who asks, all of which is subject to change. So that's the one item I wanted you to be aware of. So as part of that, we have, Ellie and I have worked our way through finalizing what work we want done in terms of network design process, and that will be a kind of a precursor to actually engaging a contractor to do the work. So the network design process that we did on our previous builds was done through a company called Vantage Point, based out in the central U.S. And through a competitive bid process, we have awarded this work several months ago to a company called JSI, and they are well regarded, and we have been using them for the efforts that we're involved in as a preliminary build out on Old Town Road in Ripton, and we're going to be using them to do the design work for our construction in both Middlebury and Ripton. But we can't spend BEAD money on it. So thank heavens our towns were generous back when we were just getting started, and the funds that they contributed were doubled by the VCVB, and a significant share of that money, plus money that shows under our spreadsheet as pre-construction, which is basically getting ready to build. So under pre-construction, we would also be spending money to JSI to do all the necessary construction documentation, including bid documents, and also helping us specify electronics needed in support of our network design. So there's a lot of work we want them to do, and we received approval from the executive committee at our last meeting to award all of that work to JSI. in the amount, I don't have it in front of me, but I think it was about $220,000. And so that is, we're on our way, and we're working, Ellie and I are working right now on supporting creation of a Gantt chart, a project schedule that will that everyone will be adhering to as we get going on the work that's necessary. So the first part of that project schedule will be a lot of preparatory work. In fact, pretty much all of the project schedule that I'm looking for is everything leading up to, but not including construction. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done just to create documentation as necessary and whatnot. So there's a lot of things that need to be done that we'll be tracking in coming months. Questions? And Ellie, what have I missed?
I can't think of a thing, Steve.
Okay. No questions from anyone? There'll be a lot to report on that. I welcome the governing board's questions, and as I think what we said before is the reason we are going to be successful at the end of the day, and we will have completed our mandate to make sure that every address in Addison County has access to broadband service, is through not what Ellie and I are doing as much as what our governing board and our executive committee is doing to keep the ball rolling and try to work our way through any obstacles we run into. It's been very heartening to see all the work that's being done and how successful we've been on all of our efforts. So certainly is going to be a promising 2026 from my perspective. Okay. In the absence of questions, I'm going to remind all of you again that we are not whole because we do not have a delegate for Panton and Whiting. I'm going to continue to ask you to keep your ear to the ground, and if you hear of anyone from one of those two towns who is even remotely interested in this work, I think the one thing that those of you who've been attending these meetings, you know that we're not currently asking a lot from any of you. We're asking for about an hour and a half of your time once a month to listen to what we're up to and asking thoughtful questions to make sure that we're on track, keeping us honest. So if you know of anyone in those towns that don't suggest to them that they're making a lifetime commitment or anything like that, when we get done with construction, there'll even be less work to be done once our network is completely built. So we'll have to see. Okay, the next meeting is on November 11, and as we said, that will be the first part of that meeting will be a hearing, which is part of our obligations as our in our role as a communication union district. So we'll look forward to seeing all of you at that meeting, and once again, still want to make sure that we have quorum. It certainly helps us do our job and feeling like we have the mandate that we're looking for. Zapata.
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether or not the fact that November 11th is Veterans Day comes into consideration for either everybody's availability or public spaces being open, etc.
Wow, we've never had that one before. I don't know that we can give you a straight answer, Zapata. I think it's a valid question. I think my defense of sticking with November 11 is the fact that pretty much all of us are attending these meetings from home, and so it's not an inconvenience per se. We will need to have a physical presence as part of our open meeting law. And Adam, is it safe to assume that ACRPC will be open on the 11th, November 11th?
I think if you want to go forward on the 11th, we can have somebody here to take care of that.
Okay. Zapata, let's kick that down to the next executive committee meeting and ask the question again, and then see if there's any consensus on how we want to proceed, and then we'll make sure our governing board is aware of any changes we want to make. As it stands right now, we're going to stick with November 11, but we're meeting shortly as an executive committee, and perhaps something different will come out of that, and we'll make sure everyone is aware of it as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, I'm not suggesting that like I can't be there, but it was more about having public spaces available, knowing that there's a holiday, and I didn't know how that factored in. So that's
Yeah.
great. I don't know that it's a major consideration if we actually have a public space like we're legally required to do.
Yep, okay. Fair enough, thank you. If there are no topics that you would like to discuss, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Steve, I just wanted to make sure I was counted. I know I wrapped about 15 minutes late. This is Carl.
Oh, hi, Carl. Thanks, Carl. Thanks for saying that. We'll make sure you're recognized as being in attendance. Still looking for a motion to approve, to adjourn.
I make a motion to approve to adjourn.
Great, thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining. Talk to you all in about a month.
Thanks.
All right.